Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne Bona. Thank you for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org. Violinist Kristin Lee is a soloist, chamber musician, and educator. Her numerous awards include an Avery Fisher Career Grant and top prizes in the Naumburg competition and the Astral Artists National Auditions, and a Dorothy DeLay Scholarship, among many other honors. She's currently a member of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. The Seoul, Korea-born musician emigrated to the United States at age 7, and her experience as a foreign-born citizen of this country has informed many of her choices as a musician and affected her deeply on a personal level as well. Kristin Lee joins me on Zoom to talk about her life in music and her 2024 debut solo album, American Sketches. Welcome. What a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations on American Sketches.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a very exciting journey for sure.
So let's go back to day one here and talk a little bit about when and how music became part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, my journey with music, I guess, started even before I was born because my mother was an opera singer. And so music was always something that was part of our household. And I have very fond memories as a 5-year-old going to the opera on the weekends and probably sleeping through most of that performance, but definitely hearing a lot of the beautiful singing from my mother. But my journey on the violin really began when I was about 6 years old. I started in Korea. I was playing the violin and the piano when I first started. And when I moved to the United States, I don't think it was necessarily in my parents' plans to stay in the United States for over a year because my father was a visiting professor to the Auburn University down in Auburn, Alabama. And so my mom said, "Oh, piano's a hassle to move. It's a lot of moving parts. And so why don't we just focus on the violin for a bit and see how that goes?" And we met a wonderful teacher named Sonia Foster in Atlanta, Georgia, who said, "Okay, I think there's a lot of talent here. Why don't we try to apply for the Juilliard pre-college program?" And then that led to us staying in the country, and violin became my primary instrument. And here I am, still playing the violin.
Wow. But so you never thought about being an opera singer like Mom?
I don't think so. Although I love to sing, I do love to sing in the shower, and I love to sing with friends and things like that. But it didn't actually take on as my professional career. No.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it was a good choice, and you had some good mentorship. In fact, that's probably a good place to go next. So you talked about Sonia Foster, who obviously was very important and very influential in sort of steering you in the right direction. Who were some of your other influential teachers and mentors, and how did they get involved, and how did they help you?
So my primary teacher, when I first went to the Juilliard School, was Dorothy DeLay. And I guess when I was a kid, I didn't know how big of a deal that was. But looking back at it now, it is such an honor that I was able to work with Miss DeLay because she passed away after about 3 years of working with her. And Dorothy DeLay was a very important figure to a lot of the celebrated violinists of today, including my other teacher, Itzhak Perlman. So I met Mr. Perlman when Miss DeLay was still alive, and she was really just sort of figuring out how to pass on the torch. And Mr. Perlman saw me perform because that particular year I had won the concerto competition at the Juilliard pre-college program playing the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. And his daughter was playing in the orchestra, actually. She was playing the flute. And he saw me play and he came backstage, personally came backstage and asked if I would like to come to his summer program, the Perlman Music program. And so since then, I became his student. Um, and then I also studied with Catherine Cho, who was a very, very important teacher to me because during the time I was in pre-college when I really needed a lot of the work in my technical setup, such as, really building my foundation with intonation and good sound production and things like that. She took about 3-4 years with me to really work on a lot of that work with me. So that was a very important period of my life working with Catherine Cho. And then in my master's program, I also worked with Donald Weilerstein, who was my teacher for about 2 years in the master's program.
Mm. Wow, it's like a who's who of music luminaries. So your family came to the U.S. from Seoul, Korea, as you just said earlier, and you were just a very little girl, and I understand that you spoke no English. This really shaped the musician you are, really shaped the person you are, and I would love for you to elaborate a little bit on that of what it was like for you.
Absolutely. So, as a child, I was a very extroverted kid. I had a lot of friends in elementary school, and in Korea, I was very, very social as a child. And then I moved to the United States, and of all places, we moved to Auburn, Alabama. And it's quite a different situation now. But when our family first moved there, we were basically the only Asian family in town. And I was certainly the only Asian, not just Korean, but the only Asian in my entire elementary school. So there wasn't a huge, diverse, population in the small town that we were in. And as a child who was very extroverted, had lots of friends, and felt like I couldn't fit in and couldn't speak the language, it was very frustrating, very tumultuous. I definitely felt extremely isolated and a little bit traumatized as a kid, because I was always needing to be with friends and hanging out, but I didn't know how to do it. And not only that, I was also getting made fun of the way I looked, and it was really, really, really tough. Um, and then while I was in Auburn that first year, when you're living in a very small town, the words spread quickly around the town, and this elderly couple who really, really loved classical music found out that this family from South Korea just moved to Auburn. And the two daughters, I have an older sister too, the two daughters played the violin, and the mother was a singer. And so she found this out because we were playing at like a local church or something like that. And so when she learned this, she decided to really take our family under her wing. She was a journalist in town, so she wrote a lot for the local newspapers. And she started writing about our family, and she started introducing me and my sister to the local, like women's club, the library. I played with all of the community orchestras in town. And so sort of this period of challenges because I couldn't speak the language and I couldn't communicate with my own words, I was able to start finding an identity as someone who played music, played the violin, and I was able to start communicating through my music. And so music really became my language, and it also became my identity. The Asian girl turned into the girl played violin. And so it really helped quite a bit, even in my school as a kid. I have very vivid memories. They said, "Oh, I heard you play the violin and you should come and play for the talent show." And so even if I couldn't speak the language, I brought the violin and started playing. And then the kids noticed and they said, oh, like do that again. And it started bringing a lot of attraction. I was able to start making friends because the violin became this thing that I was able to do that no one else could. And so that was a very interesting experience and probably a very pivotal thing in helping me to really have the violin as my voice and helped me to feel like that was something uh, that was very important in my life that I wanted to continue on with.
Like the music became your intermediary with those other people.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a great story. That's wonderful. And it sounds too that your early experiences have sort of shaped some of the choices you're making musically, including for your 2024 debut solo album, which is American Sketches. You have chosen a really interesting lineup of composers to feature on this: Harry Burleigh, Kevin Putz, Amy Beach, Thelonious Monk, Scott Joplin, and George Gershwin. How and why did you choose this music and these composers? Tell us where these came from.
Absolutely. Well, this particular project actually stems back from quite a number of years ago when I was invited by the Strathmore series in Maryland to give a performance specifically delving into the American composers. So this idea of learning about what American sound is and what American music is was probably during that time. Um, and at the time, I had not really known anything about American music other than maybe George Gershwin and Aaron Copland, maybe. Um, so when I did this research, I realized that there were all these names that I had never heard of. So that struck a lot of curiosity. And then I started to understand that there were a lot of these compositional sort of tools that a lot of American composers had implemented, such as like minimalism and, like composers like Charles Ives, who was implementing a lot of the folk sounds into his compositions. And then I realized that there were a lot of composers who were also very influenced by other genres of music. Such as George Gershwin implementing a lot of the jazz influences to his sound, but not only him being influenced by the jazz, but him influencing other composers like Maurice Ravel while he was in Paris, influencing the sounds of the American sounds. So I think one sort of opportunity and one research sort of evolved into another, making me realize, okay, so American music is something that is so much in the realm of what America really stands for as well, where one sound, one genre, if you want to call it, inspires another and evolves into something new and creates something different, and that influences and inspires something else and creates something new. Basically the melting pot of sounds that brings new culture, new sounds, and new creations. So that's why in this particular album, I really wanted to represent what that would be if it was in an album. Understanding and celebrating what's in the past, celebrating how that has influenced what is current today, celebrating something that was influenced by the Western classical sounds and how that has influenced other genres of sounds. The idea of different compositional tools like improvisation versus written music, how one has inspired one another. And so I guess if you don't have that context, it could seem like it's just like a mix of just random things, but it's actually that's kind of a point in a lot of ways where you have to celebrate the idea of the differences that are actually influenced by one another and helping it to be what is of music that is being written today.
Mm-hmm. I'm so interested that you brought up improvisation, because as classical musicians, we're so often not given permission, if you will, to do that. And I remember even hearing, I'm a flute player, and I remember reading something about Yo-Yo Ma, like before the Silk Road project, where he was saying how really uncomfortable he was with the whole notion of improvisation. I mean, he's Yo-Yo Ma. He could do whatever he wants, as far as I'm concerned. But he was so uncomfortable because we're not given permission. We're not trained. We're not comfortable with it. So how did you break through that? How did you get comfortable with that idea?
Well, by no means I'm still comfortable with that idea. But the idea, I think, is that I'm always looking for things that will challenge me and that I will try to promote the idea of um, doing things that I'm not always familiar with, because that's how we can always evolve and always develop as a musician and as an artist as well, right? Um, but the world of improvisation first entered into my life probably when I was in my master's years at the Juilliard School. I started to collaborate with some composers, which led me to being very curious about working with other types of musicians, and came along with some jazz musicians that I befriended. And then I befriended them because they had so many questions for me. They were asking like, oh, I just heard the Bartok violin concerto for the first time, and it's so fascinating. I can't believe that he's using these intervals and these harmonies, and then Berg. Like I learned about Berg recently, and Berg is so different from Bartok because X, Y, and Z. Like they had so much knowledge about my world,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how to actually have a conversation back and asking questions about the musicians of their world.
Mhm.
And in a weird way, I felt really ashamed and really embarrassed because I realized you have so much interest, you take so much interest in the music that I play, but I have never even given the idea or the thought that I should be interested in what you're doing and your music. And so that kind of led me to being more curious about their world. Um, and I mean, long story short, when I realized that when I was more informed with different types of musicians and different types of music, it really helped me play in a very different way that was more liberating and perhaps more maturing in the way I was interpreting the music of Schumann or Schubert or Brahms. So that led me to realize, okay, the more informed I am, the more knowledge I allow myself to have that is not so one-sided in my world of sounds, but other worlds of sounds, which is actually, basically what these composers did. Like Mozart and Beethoven were incredible improvisers. Bartok took a lot of interest from folk music, and there are tape recordings of him, just being curious about sounds. It's not just about genre or one type of culture, but just our curiosity, our openness and open-heartedness to just being uh, eager to learn more about different things is what has created these types of great music. And so, as the interpreter, as a performer of the music of the composers, it's also my job to be able to have those abilities, but also to really keep that curiosity and openness at all times. And so that's kind of how it led there. But again, I'm still learning. I don't feel comfortable as I would play written music, but um, it's getting there.
Learn by doing. So you have two collaborators on American Sketches, Jeremy Johnny Jordan and June Cho, both pianists. Tell me about them. How do you know them? How did you choose them for this recording?
Yes, so both Jeremy and June were in school with me when I was at the Juilliard School. I have known June for a very long time. I knew him since he was in the pre-college program. So I knew him when he had basically just moved to the United States from Korea. But Jeremy and I had known each other from college, and we weren't really necessarily friends during the school years. But we reconnected years later because I was attending a concert that Jeremy was performing with my other friend, Mark Dover, who is the clarinist of the Imani Winds. And they were doing a program that was mixing written music and improvised music. And this was at a time when I was really, like delving into this idea of wanting to learn different types of sounds. And so when I went to this concert, I was just completely blown away with Jeremy's ability to play equally so incredibly improvised and written music. So I, saw him at the concert and asked if he would be interested in working together and if he would teach me how to improvise a little bit more. And so that was kind of how this whole um, project began. Even before it became an album, we started doing it in recitals and performing together, exchanging ideas, and then it led to American Sketches.
True collaboration. So, just as you had some amazing teachers and mentors that you talked about earlier, you have made teaching and mentoring a very important part of your career as well. You're on the faculty of the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, CCM. You've done a residence with Singapore National Youth Orchestra, with El Sistema Chamber Music Festival of Venezuela, and some other things. So, how has your experience, the teachers and the mentors that you had when you were, a young up and coming classical musician, how did that shape the teacher and the mentor you are today?
I feel extremely fortunate to have had the mentors and the teachers that I've had throughout my years of playing the violin. I mean, I think that's maybe the most valuable thing that I have been gifted with my life, because every single person who took me on to help become the person who I am today have been just absolutely extraordinary people. Um, and the reason why they're so extraordinary is not only because of their skills as a teacher on the violin, but I think every person that has influenced me, like Mr. Perlman, Kathy Cho, Dorothy DeLay, Donald Weilerstein, they've always emphasized the importance of being a well-rounded person. They've always emphasized the importance of being a good human before anything else. And so I think that has helped me along the way to really understand why I play music. Like, what is the reason? Um, what is my responsibility as a violinist, as a performer? Is it really about, my music and my pursuit? I mean, yes, but what's beyond that? What's more important? Is it about bringing the community together? Is it about how I can represent what it means to use music as a tool to, celebrate humanity? I think those are the kinds of things that they have really, really emphasized along my my journey as a violinist. And so I am so deeply grateful to that, because, the world is it's a tough place. I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot that can feel very, very challenging, especially when you're trying to pursue music this day and age. And so I take that very seriously now that I'm a teacher. I try to really emphasize what I have been given with these teachers to my students, to have them understand, the pursuit, the discipline, and the practice and the perseverance obviously, is at the utmost importance in becoming a good violinist, but it has to be fueled by, being a good colleague, understanding the absolute most important factor, which is collaborating with people, not trying to um see the negative in the world, but really seeing the joy and the light, and how you can be somebody that can really shape the communities through your music and your art. So I really try to take that very seriously and implement that to the teaching that I'm doing to my students.
What a beautiful way to honor that, as you say, the gift that you got from your teachers and mentors. And speaking of that, you're also the founding artistic director of Emerald City Music. Would you elaborate on the mission and, who your audiences are? What is Emerald City Music?
So Emerald City Music is a chamber music organization that I co-founded with my colleague about 9 years ago. We're in our ninth season, looking towards our 10th landmark, which is crazy that it's been this long. And we started this organization because as two younger people who absolutely love chamber music and classical music, we wanted to find a way to present music in a way that was more relatable to what is current and of the 20s and 30s and 40s. So we decided to start this in Seattle, Washington, a thriving city with a lot of these tech companies, with a lot of younger folks, younger generations coming into town. And so we wanted to make it relevant to that particular demographic. So we wanted to have a drink in hand, have a space that is maybe not necessarily your most traditional concert space. So we don't have an actual stage, but we keep the level of the audience and the stage on the same level. And people come very casually and experience music. And so the mission of this organization is really about making classical music accessible and being able to bring sort of a different look to what traditionally has been the classical music's presentation and sort of reshaping that into something more relatable.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of feedback are you getting?
Well, we are in our ninth year. We were able to survive for this long, and we have great support. Our concerts are always fully booked, and people are always extremely excited about the concerts that we're bringing and the musicians that we are bringing to our stage. And so it's been a really rewarding experience and journey to bring this organization to the Seattle area.
Oh, cool. So what else? What are you most passionate about right now? Musically or otherwise?
This album has been definitely something that's been really fun. I've been playing the violin my whole life. But it's actually my very first album that I've actually curated and put out there myself. And, a lot of the times when you are in this industry of classical music, you are given the piece that you're going to perform, right? The concerto that you will be performing with certain orchestra, or if you're playing a chamber music concert, you are given the pieces that you'll be playing with other colleagues. And so it was kind of a foreign area for me to curate everything from beginning to the end, the programs, the collaborators, the CD album cover, the liner notes, all of these things were all very much crafted by myself. And it was really fun, but also to be perfectly honest, I was a little afraid as well because I've never really put my touch into something from, beginning to the end like this. And so because it felt like I was really revealing something that I had never done in a way all these years. And so there was a lot of sort of weird fear around how it would be received, but I've been just so grateful with the response that everybody's been giving me. It's been so fun to do these interviews and meeting a lot of people from different places. And so it's been a real stepping stone and a really great journey to help understand myself as an artist. So that's been a really very rewarding experience.
That's great. Well, as I said, congratulations again on that. I have been speaking on Zoom with award-winning violinist Kristen Lee about her career as a soloist, chamber musician, and educator, and about her 2024 debut solo album, American Sketches. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me again.